It is my pleasure to welcome Bill Starkey to the show. Bill, how are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I was extremely flattered. My show is not centralized around Kiss, but anybody that listens to my show knows that I've got a large Kiss connection that actually started when I was in the womb. My parents always remind me that my first Kiss concert I attended was the Crazy Nights tour when my mom was pregnant. And to come full circle, my wife was pregnant with, oddly enough, we named him William. I'm sorry, Bill, that wasn't after you. It was after my grandfather, but my wife was pregnant with him, and we took our 9-year-old to the End of the Road show in Phoenix. So, as you are a giant staple in history, pleasure to have you on the show.
It's an honor. I looked at your show, your variety of guests you've had, and the cool thing about it is you've got all different kinds of people on here, and it's just I'm just happy to be a part of it. So,
Well, thank you for that, and I'm flattered that you went and took the time to go look and see
oh,
what we're doing here. One of the things that I guess, just for those that don't know who Bill is, he is known for founding the Kiss Army, and then there's a little bit of, I'm going to say, just a discrepancy in terms of stories at how that starts. And I want to get to how the Kiss Army came to be, but I want to talk a little bit about your background first. Your dad worked for Columbia Records. Is that right?
that's right.
What did he do for Columbia?
My dad was just a basic high school graduate, and he had great work ethic, and he was what was called an expediter, and it was his job to, since most of the records, believe it or not, back in those days in the 70s, most of the vinyl was made in the record plant in Terre Haute, Indiana, and that was for most of the country. And he was an expediter, which meant that his job was to keep track of the records coming in and making sure people were getting their shipments. So he was in constant contact with the labels and the shipping people, and he would always be very aware of sales and what was moving and what wasn't moving. And his major account was the Warner Brothers account. And sometimes some of the perks for me as a kid would be I could get, he'd bring home some records for me sometimes. A lot of times it was stuff that I wanted, but there was also times he was telling me what I should be listening to, because he'd say, well, if we're selling a lot of these Bob Dylan, we're selling a lot of these, I think Todd Rundgren and all these people. And I said, the time, you're a kid, I respect those people greatly now, but I'm like, I prefer this band or that band and all that. And he'd usually bring me home something, and we didn't. I mean, all we lived off with my dad's income. My mom was a housewife, and back then we could do it, and we lived pretty comfortably, and I had a pretty decent record collection, and my parents, I guess, were to the point where they always felt as long as they could see what I was doing and where I was at, they were fine with it. So I mean, if you look at my pictures, I had very long hair and
Right.
stuff like that. And back then, in very conservative Terre Haute, Indiana, you could actually get in trouble for just having long hair. Now, what that trouble was, we don't know, but they would use that for an excuse to like call you into the office and stuff and just kind of question you to see what you were doing, because they just assumed that you didn't look, like, and I was kind of a phony. I had long hair and all that, but I was basically under a pretty decent home and very watchful parents, and the I was the worst kind of nerd, because I was a nerd that didn't have good grades. So I mean, most nerds are like, well, like Sheldon. I didn't have his grades. I was the nerd that didn't have good grades.
The plug for the Big Bang Theory. I grew up on the conservative side of Washington State. And when my uncle was in high school, which would have been, He probably listens to this and he might get mad at me later, but it would have been the 70s. And he had long hair and was in the principal's office for having long hair just in general. And you guys are both cool dudes in my book.
Yeah.
But so when your dad was at Columbia, he had at least access when he was telling you what you should and shouldn't like for music. He knew what units were selling in terms of volume for stores.
He never said I shouldn't be listening to anything. That was the cool thing. They never, I mean, because I know when I was playing Alice Cooper and Black Sabbath and stuff like that, I mean, of course, you'd hear the usual, turn that shit down. But, they were pretty open-minded about it. I'm sure I'd overheard some of their friends, get after them about, my appearance and what I was listening to. And they just kind of brushed it off and said, well, we know he's a good kid. And, we're just fine with it, So, he never told me what I shouldn't be listening to at all. I mean, I remember he took me to my first Kiss show and it was supposed to have been Deep Purple. And of course, he insisted that he was going. And he didn't, of course, he wouldn't like that kind of music. He was listening to like Sinatra and Mario Lanza, people like that. And
pure garbage, right? Who needs to hear Sinatra?
I mean, so, but he was really enthralled by Kiss because of he said like the high school atmosphere, raw rock kind of stuff because this was happening in a very historic high school basketball gym in Evansville, Robert Stadium. It was very circular with wooden bleachers, and Kiss whipped the crowd up into a frenzy, and they were just the opening act. And my dad was left, and he's like, he could tell my mom, "It's Jane, you got to see these guys." And could he stand to listen to it? No, but he really appreciated the effort, So he didn't discourage it.
So I guess taking you to your first Kiss show, and it's well documented, but there's a lot of listeners on my show that don't have an idea of how it really started. I mean, we've heard soundbite after soundbite of how the evolution of the Kiss Army started and how it's heard today. It's kind of like the old telephone game you heard about in school. But in terms of what you guys did with the radio station, set the story straight. How did it get founded?
Well, how did it get founded? Well, I went back to school and eventually told my best buddy at that time, Jay Evans, and Jay and I were very much, again, he was as nerdy as I was, except in Jay's case, he got great grades. And he was a great student. And I just told Justin, Jay, I saw Kiss the other night and they're phenomenal. And of course, Jay would say, that you've never been to see anybody. That's your first show. And he's right. And so it was kind of hard for me to say anything. But so to make a long story short, eventually we started calling the radio station and asking to play Kiss, because back in the 70s, you could call what was called the request line and request music, and they would insert it in along with their regular playlist. We were just told from our local radio station, WVTS at that time, that they didn't play Kiss. And they never gave us a reason. They just did this. And Jay and I came up with the thing that, well, we should just start jokingly calling ourselves the Kiss Army. And then we started writing threatening letters and stuff like that to the radio station saying, you need to play Kiss or else. And of course, they knew it was all in good humor. Back those days, it wasn't terrorism like it probably would be today. And eventually, Kiss came to Terre Haute, and everything was perfectly timed. I mean, Kiss Alive came out, and Kiss was really starting to just start headlining good shows, And Rich Dickerson, who was the program director, who I was told didn't like Kiss, called him a blankety blank New York band, like the New York Dolls. He compared them to and said that that's what they said. The disc jockey said, and they claimed they actually threw their Kiss records out. Well, eventually they had to come to me and say, can you bring your Kiss records in, because we need to make copies of them. It was like, I won. So
well, and for those that are listening to now, the timeline, my 9-year-old and I were just talking about this. We were in the car. I believe that is the best form of communication you can have with a kid, because they're trapped and they have to talk to you when they're in the car. And like she is absolutely thrilled with the show Stranger Things. And I've watched a few. I think I've watched 3 of the 4 seasons, but in season 4, my wife was getting ready to start watching it, and That takes place in, I believe it's Hawkins, but I cannot remember the state. It might even be
I
Indiana,
thought it
but
was Indiana.
yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
And they're in the
Plymouth
gym,
Rock.
and you hear Detroit Rock City. And my 9-year-old's been around me for a number of years, so she obviously knows that Kiss is played in our household. That's likely not normal for a 9-year-old today to get that. But going back to the timeline, I mean, if you think post 2000 really forward, Kiss is now in this legacy mode where everybody knows who they are. I went into Kohl's yesterday and they have shirts and Kohl's. They're just branded everywhere. It's not uncommon to hear Rock and Roll All Night played, but back then, those first 3 albums weren't really played. All they were known for was the live show. And so you're demanding, sending letters that you said would be acts of terrorism now. But again, we're in the 70s. You can do and say a lot more than what you could say now. In terms of the weight behind it, I mean, you mentioned you're just a nerdy kid without grade or with bad grades. Set the record straight. Bill is a school teacher now, so clearly he figured grades out. So this isn't an excuse, folks, to go start a fan club and drop out of school by any means. But you're sending these letters. At what point did it get the attention of Bill Aucoin, Kiss's management? Like, how long have you been doing this before it gets their attention?
We started in January of 75, which is my senior year of high school. And of course, we would still get teased by our classmates because like then you wore your band's shirt like you would a sports team. Well, there were no Kiss shirts at the time. So one of our friends, Rob Smith, got into the print shop at North and brilliantly, with the help of Jay Evans, I believe, printed up our first mass-produced Kiss shirts. And we picked certain days to wear them to school. And, you know, it was like, hey, we're going to wear our shirts. And then there are pictures out there where I think we posed a couple times in the men's restroom at Terre Haute, North Vigo. So this was January, February, March. And then in April, Kiss were headlining, and Jay and I decided to round up some kids to drive all the way from Terre Haute to Indy to see Kiss play. And they just blew everybody away. And that was really the actual formation, I think, of the Kiss Army as far as a group of more than just Jay and I, of people who were calling the station asking to request Kiss. Okay, so we graduate and it's going through the summer, and you know, I'm getting kind of feeling kind of bad because all my friends are leaving for college except me, and I didn't know what to do. And so I continued to do this stuff, and we were still having concerts in Terre Haute. Believe it or not, we were getting people like the Doobie Brothers, Eagles, Chicago, all these bands that were getting tremendous airplay that Kiss wasn't getting. And yet none of those acts sold out Holman Center, which is like a 10,000 seat arena. The only act that sold out Holman Center was Elvis, which was in May of that year. Elvis sold out. And when Rich Dickerson, before, like, maybe this is what was cool about Rich. Rich has always had an idea of pushing stuff. And Rich said, you know, Kiss is coming in November. He said, why don't you write those stupid letters you have called the Kiss Army Letter of the Day? Write maybe 3 or 4 to a group and send them, and I'll read them over the air at 5 o'clock during rush hour, and we'll call it the Kiss Army Letter of the Day. Well, the problem with that is that Rich was pretty hilarious, and he always had the final word. So no matter whatever we said, he slammed us big time and tore us apart. Made fun of the grammar. He said they were grammatically incorrect, and everything was just. He had made us look like some morons. And then we would in turn say crazy stuff like, well, Kiss was better than the Beatles. As far as we were concerned, there was nobody else but Kiss. And we were the Kiss Army. And nobody else had a fan club like this, whatever. Well, eventually the Kiss show in November sold out. And we were told, or I was told by one of the other people that worked at the station, that Aucoin management's people called the station and said, what did you do differently about the Kiss promotions that you didn't do for Chicago, the Doobie Brothers, and everybody else? And the Eagles, that didn't sell out at all. I think the Eagles maybe do 4,000 or something. And that was at the height of their popularity. And they said, well, some idiot kid in this group called themselves the Kiss Army, and they were reading these letters over there. Well, I mean, so then one night I went by the station and I had some of my friends painted up like the members of Kiss, and we called them the Unknown Soldiers. And for cheap tricks, we would drive them around the city of Terre Haute, parade them around the malls and everything. And then Jay and I'd walk like 6 to 8 feet behind them and just laugh at people's reaction to the people painted up as Kiss. because they had no idea who it was. So we decided that night to take them to WVTS radio station because we were on good terms now. And Rich Dickerson's wife opened the door and she was jumping up and down. She says, the KISS conference sold out and KISS wants to meet you. They like the idea of the KISS Army. And I'm like, we didn't want to meet KISS. I mean, they were way too dark. I mean, you had no idea what they were like. I mean, makeup wise or anything, how they talked or anything. You didn't know Gene talked like a professor. I mean, we didn't want to meet him. But at the same time, it was just bizarre because she was the one who was excited. She said, the show sold out. They want to meet you. I'm like,
well, and that's an interesting point too, because again, like going back in time to like put yourselves in that spot, like now, I mean, you go on YouTube, you write in KISS and you're going to find their recent interview on, I think I just saw one for an Australian CNN. You're going to see clips of the family jewels. You're going to see everything. You know everything about them, but then you didn't know Peter was going to have a Brooklyn accent. You didn't know Ace probably wouldn't talk.
No, we used to think we were, as fans in the audience, Gene actually scared me. And can you imagine the shock of me when I'm sitting here listening to Paul Stanley talk as eloquently as possible. Nothing like, hi, everybody over here. I want to, I mean, it was nothing like that. And then Gene was talking like, then hearing Peter talk, Peter scared the crap out of me. I mean, he was one tough dude. I mean, he was like, F this and F that. I mean, and the only time Peter was really approachable was, of course, it was when Lydia was with him. But he was the one that would scare you. Who knew that he would sound like that? Peter had a great singing voice. So, I mean, he was really had a kick-ass singing voice.
Oh yeah, I still love some of those the early records. I like what he does on Hotter Than Hell and everything too. I think those are some of his songs there are my favorite. And going back to those first three albums now, in our household we do play vinyl. I've got both my parents' collections and I like to go back to it. And the one I go back to over and over and over is Hotter Than Hell. And my mom's original 1974 KISS album that I'm probably going to wear through it one of these days, but anyway,
I like Hotter Than Hell too, because I know it was produced really odd, but there's just something really dark about it that it just really, and it affected me as a child because it just didn't even almost sound like musical instruments. So can you imagine how weird it was for me to go to the KISS show and come home and then put the vinyl on and you lose some of that effect. Now, you can play Deuce off the first album, but it doesn't hit you in the face like it did at a live show of the band. I mean, that was just a weird feeling to go back home and play the KISS records after seeing them live. So you knew why KISS Alive had to come out.
Right. And again, going back to the formation of the KISS Army, did they roll out the red carpet for you at that point, or what happened?
Who's they? What do you mean they?
KISS management. I mean, I know it's pretty well documented that you got to go on stage with KISS. You were presented a plaque that you've essentially could probably retire off of at this point if you wanted to.
Are you talking about this thing right here?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard you've been offered like 25 grand for that thing. Is that true?
It was 10,000 a long time ago. I don't know that it's that much of a collectible. I mean, to me, it's more of a personal thing. So I just have stuff that I would never part with anyway. I mean, who would want something with my name on it? But anyhow, as far as
a lot of people would probably want that with your name on it. KISS fans are crazy, Bill.
As far as rolling, okay, I'll try to make this as brief as possible. Once KISS came into contact with me was on November 10th of 1975, and the gentleman's name was Alan Miller, who I thought was very prominent in KISS promotions back then. And Miller would call me daily, collect. And he was trying to create the Terre Haute. At that time, I had no idea what happened in Cadillac. And they were trying to recreate Cadillac, Michigan in Terre Haute, with marching bands, people painted up, like the whole city turning out for KISS. And I basically kind of didn't get a lot of it done because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have transportation and things like that. And my mother thought I was crazy because I was doing all this stuff because I didn't have a job. And she's like, what are you messing around with this KISS stuff for? And the guy would call me every day. And he then sent me a letter and said that eventually what they were going to do was have the KISS Army in Terre Haute, and I was going to run it. Well, I didn't have a job, so I felt like at that time I was employed by the band. So, yeah, as far as rolling out the red carpet, I got a lot of attention. And the day Kiss came, it was like one of the most incredible things that ever happened to me because I had no idea what to expect. I mean, we knew Kiss was coming, but I didn't know I'd be on stage with them. I didn't know I was going to get a plaque. I didn't know later on in the evening I would be having dinner with them. I mean, it was incredible at that time.
So being a kid that calls themselves a nerdy Kiss fan, I'm the same kid that is a nerdy Kiss fan. You get to go have dinner with Kiss. I know this last year I got a chance to meet Ace Frehley. Big thanks to John and the rest of his crew for when they came through Phoenix. I got to meet Ace. I've got my wife who's like 38 weeks pregnant. I've got my little one and a friend who is in town. And me, who's known who cannot shut up. I mean, I talk for a living and my day job, and I do this. I go to meet Ace and I just freeze. And the people that are with me are like, we've never seen him be quiet this long. Apparently, this is how you shut him up. Is that how you're like, or do you just fire off questions? What are you doing?
Yeah, I was a little bit like that, but we always still laughed at when Jay and I were there, and you're sitting there and Gene's on one side and Paul Stanley's on the other, and you're like going, wow, because you've never seen them with their makeup on. So that alone is a religious experience. Because
I guess that would make sense. Who's going to sit down in the demon makeup and eat at a Chinese restaurant or something,
And that's what we were doing. And I was, when they came in, we had to kind of like figure out, well, who's who? Because they were all tall and they all had jet black hair. You knew Peter because he would be the shortest of them, but everybody else was like very skinny, thin, and everything was jet black hair and black outfits. So yeah, we had to just who's who here. And the first silly thing I think I asked Gene, and that we didn't know what to say to him, was, "What's the second line in Deuce?" We couldn't figure it out. And Gene goes, "Get up and get your grandma out of here. Pick up because Jimmy's ready." We're like going, "You have all this time to meet Kiss," and that's the first.
That's the question you asked.
And I think Paul Stanley, I asked him about guitars and what his hobbies were, and he told me about he had a vet and he was collecting antiques and stuff, and I thought, I can't believe I'm doing this, And then over on the bar from the left of us was Alex Lyson and Geddy Lee, because they were Rush opened up for the band for Kiss.
Oh, well, that's cool. Part of the story I didn't know. Just by the way, Rush is in the corner.
Yeah, by the way, Rush is in the corner, and it was surreal, and then it was just one of those weird. And the cool thing about it is I was allowed to bring my painted up guys with me that I had paraded around the city, and they got to go into, and again, we were all like, I don't know, a bunch of stunned kids sitting around a table, and here comes Gene Simmons eating pizza with us. I mean, it's crazy.
And then it eventually looks like, and you mentioned this right before we went there, but it looks like it might become a job for you to run a fan club. Were fan clubs popular at the time, or was this like the thought of the fan club?
No, there were fan clubs, but we didn't know about it. And but they just thought that the potential was there for Kiss. Now, I have been told through years of doing like detective work that back in September, Kiss had already contacted Boutwell Enterprises, and they were talking about doing a fan club. The only stumbling block was they were just waiting for a name, and we provided that. So that was kind of unusual too. But at the time, like I said, we had to make our own Kiss shirts at the time. But by November, I don't even think they had any Kiss shirts then. I think they did have a tour book then. I think the tour book came out maybe the fall of '75, but there just wasn't. They weren't really even close to being into the merchandising that they eventually would do. And that was even after I'd fallen out with the band, like in the late '70s. That's when it started to pick up. But even before then, all they had were a couple of shirts and a poster, and that's probably about all you got for your Kiss Army membership kit.
Right. And when you look at kind of how that went, it's transcended, I'm going to say, genres of music. I mean, if you look at, I got an email the other day from the Nut House, which is Luke Bryan's fan club, or you've got the Al Dean Army in country music as well. And every artist has got their fan club. And I remember when they were thinking about, well, you need to pledge for the Kiss Army. You see those old advertisements, only $5 a year. I mean, this is now becoming a funding stream for artists that started in 1975 with what you guys had done. You created the blueprint for something that's still active, not only with Kiss 40 some years later, but with other bands as well. Is that something you ever think about and just reflect on and go, man, that's kind of cool? Like just thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I remember the first time I found out that I wasn't running the fan club was, I think, in March of '76. And I got a care package from the people at Boutwell, and they were really generous and sent me a lot of Kiss Army kits and told me that they would be running the Kiss Army at that time, and they were looking forward to working with me as far as ideas and things like that. And I remember talking to one of the individuals long distance a lot, and she told me flat out, this was out in LA, and LA was never big on Kiss, and really New York wasn't either. I've always said that the Midwest made Kiss, and we embraced them. That there was something about them that we were attracted to me because of the religious conservatism or something of the Midwest. We needed something to save us. So, so she told me, I remember one of the times she said that she wanted to pick my brain about this because as far as she was concerned, she didn't quite understand their appeal. And we would we would write back and forth all the time. And I think she felt it was just her duty to keep in touch with me and call me. And anytime I wanted anything from them, all I had to do and call and say, hey, if I want 6 more membership kits, because I'm going to give them out to like the guy at church and my mailman or something like that, I could have it just like that. The thing of it is, there just wasn't a lot of stuff then.
Right. It's not like it is now, even. It seems like the Kiss Army kind of went dark in the 80s and 90s, and then with the reunion tour kind of picked back up. But one story that I remembered, and I was kind of just doing this in preparation talking to you, was that one of the notable pledges, so to speak, to the Kiss Army was Condoleezza Rice. Did you have anything like, were you involved at all in that? Because that seemed like that was kind of like when it came back, and I think there was, Kiss Day in Terre Haute and all those places. And
no, that was just a thing where I think they hooked up somewhere, and I think somebody in the background decided to do it. I don't think it was anything that was planned. I think they were just trying to show that, the Kiss Army reaches far and wide, and it's just like whenever time I run into Kiss fans, I've met all kinds of incredible people, from all different walks of life. And the other funny thing is they cross different generations of Kiss. Like, I'm more of a '70s vintage Kiss kind of guy, and a lot of guys I know are '80s Kiss fans, some '90s fans, and lately I'm running into people that are finding me on Facebook, and they just started liking the band in 2010, and they're kids.
Yeah, well, and that's interesting too, I guess, for folks a little bit behind the scenes. It was when I reached out to Bill to do this show, he had plans with another Kiss fan already this week. And when you said you had plans with another Kiss fan, I thought, well, man, who's going to come down and see you? And it was Kenny Bagley, I think, is what I saw posted online. That's not just a Kiss fan. That is like the Kiss fan.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I tell him about that all the time. And we talked, and I said, Kenny, you're getting almost as probably more popular than I am as far as known recognition. And he's very humble about it and all that. And I just said, a good friend of mine was coming through, and he said, we had dinner a couple of weeks ago. And then I said, Kenny lives not too far from him. Well, he knew Kenny because they both do all the cruises. I mean, they do all the cruises. And I've never been able to do the cruise because I'm a teacher and I'm at school at that time of the year. And I just can't take a week or 2 off and just say, well, I need to go on a cruise. And,
right.
And,
so by the way, I'm leaving. I'm going to go on a boat with a bunch of rabid Kiss fans.
Rabid Kiss fans, yeah. And but no, you're right. Kenny he's the real deal. And there can be some very overbearing Kiss fans that you just can only take so much of them, but he's not like that at all. He's pretty down to earth, and he's fun to talk to. And but there's a lot of them. He's just one that but I could tell you all kinds of stories about these people.
How many nights a month are you meeting up with Kiss fans just based on your notoriety? Is that
was one of the just maybe 3 or 4 times a whole year.
Oh, okay.
A lot of these people are they're not here. If they're coming through town, they say, well, let's meet or whatever. I mean, Indianapolis isn't really a hotbed for stuff, but if somebody's on a business trip and they come through here and they want to say, come by and say, hey, that's fine. But to me, I just kind of laugh that they even want to do it, because I'm just like they are. Actually, they have more things to talk about than I do. I don't have any, I haven't been to any shows in a long time. I haven't been to any events. There haven't been any Kiss Expos. So I don't really have anything to talk about. I mean, we just might get together and talk about, well, the band is doing this, and what do you think about that? Or like with Kenny went to the Nashville thing, and I want to know all the details about how that went and how he spent his money and what he thought was well and not well, and and that I asked him about the cruises and stuff like that, and all the cruises are different. But if a couple guys want to come out and take you to dinner, why would you say no to that? I mean, the company first off is great, and then you have something in common.
Oh
So
yeah, the legwork's already done for you, and I don't know. The way you come about it, you're kind of humble. I read a statement that just says you feel like you get a whole lot more credit than you deserve for starting this. I don't think so. I think that you've got your place in history, and if anything, I think there are some people that would have held more resentment with things to happen in life if you thought, well, hey, I could take this off. That could have been your gig for life, running the Kiss Army from the fans' perspective, and it kind of got taken from underneath you, and no ill will. I think that's a lot to be said. I think that in today's day and age, a lot of people that would have just said, well, then I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I was done wrong once.
well, you learn a lot. I mean, it's been like 40 or almost 50 years later. Um, I've learned that Kiss would be hard guys to work for, and at the time
Oh yeah.
I was a kid with a high school degree with so much more to learn. I will say that Kiss Army would have worked in Terre Haute because we had the Columbia House Record Club then, and we were a mail order machine back then, so we were doing it out of the central part of the country. And I would have killed for those guys. That's another crazy thing. I once after meeting with them, I would have killed for them. I mean, that's how bad I was. So it was best that I did it and that it didn't work out. And you just learn that the music business there's just a lot of stuff about the music business, and people are going to tell you things that they think you want to hear, and sometimes they're going to tell you stuff you don't want to hear, and you just got to move on. I mean, it's I'm sure there's far worse things that have happened to musicians and songwriters and stuff like that than me not getting to run a fan club, which who knows, I probably could have been fired from in a couple of years, and then how bitter would have I been then? I mean, and Kiss does let go of people. I mean, back in the 70s, they had like a different road manager every tour, and that alone proved to me that, man, this is not a good business, because why do they keep replacing these guys?
Was there anything that you saw in your time with Kiss that you were just flabbergasted at, or some story that you're just like, I didn't think this was going to happen, and it's just crazy to think about? I mean, obviously was 4 different personalities in that band, but did you just stumble upon something where you were almost like, I wish I didn't know that?
Not that I didn't know that, but I think a lot of people were surprised that while Ace and Peter did do their wild and crazy stuff, Gene and Paul walked the walk and talked the talk. They never did quote unquote the rock and roll lifestyle. I mean, they were always very professional. And I remember other people that were in all of that saying, this band does this and then, like you might even say an Aerosmith or people like that. You knew what those guys were like. Gene and Paul were never like that. And for the most part, they kept Kiss professional. I mean, that was one of the unique things. But I think if you had to say what really shocked me the most was, if I had to think about one thing, it was, I have never seen a band go from like playing as the opening act in 1 year, and then like maybe 16 months later headlining big shows. That rise to fame as quick as it was, and to be a part of it and to see it was unbelievable, because they even had the balls, and I still tell people this one story where a couple times I saw them and they were the opening act, but they would play last. And who does that? I mean, I remember going to I think the second show I saw them play, it was like a 5 or 6 hour concert marathon right in between Christmas and New Year's. And the headliner, REO Speedwagon, was finished at midnight. And they told the guy, REO said, stay tuned for Kiss. Well, we had been sitting there with my mother since 5 o'clock in the afternoon, sitting through some terrible bands like Hydra, Quicksilver Messenger Service, bands I never even would remember that much, but and Kiss didn't come on till well after midnight, which would have been Sunday morning. And Paul Stanley goes, "Hey, Indianapolis, better late than never." And then they came out and just kicked ass. I mean, who does that? Who plays last? Who has that? I mean, can you imagine how many people left the arena and thought, well, okay, the concert's over. Ario's left, even though the guy said stay tuned for Kiss. Nobody knew who they were that stayed except us. We stayed. And my mom wanted to leave us. And this is why we were here. We came to see this band. I wanted to see. The only bad thing was when Gene did the blood thing, Mom screamed, and I just had to go like this. And I said, "Mom, it's not real," you know. She goes, "Ah," and I'm like, that was the only
Yeah,
embarrassing thing was she saw. And then later on, she became a huge Gene fan, which was I never understood. But I mean, maybe she just like she was intrigued by his whole the demon thing up on stage.
yeah, both my mom and my dad, we've been to multiple shows together, and my mom will eat it up, so to speak. And the last time we saw him in Phoenix, she was on the second row, and she goes, "I hope we'll get blood on us." And I thought, well, and my mom taught preschool for 20 years, so that is something about her. Well, Bill, I'm going to make you stay on for just a second, but I appreciate you jumping on the show. Thanks for everything, and I feel like I should salute you, the general of the Kiss Army.
I'll salute you back.